On the one hand, you know that you should exercise for all of its benefits, like mental health, toning, muscle strength, heart health, and more. On the other hand, you also have anemia, which makes exercising very difficult. What should you do? That's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. But first, let's define anemia. The definition is a low red blood cell count. And the way it's measured is not with ferritin, that's more measurement of iron. The way it's measured is directly with red blood cells, but also hemoglobin. Now, what are some of the symptoms of anemia? One symptom is fatigue, another one is shortness of breath, and a third one is dizziness. Now, it's red blood cells, but red blood cells are made of more than just iron. So there are different kinds of anemia. There's, yes, iron deficiency anemia, there's B12 deficiency anemia, and there's folic acid or folate deficiency anemia. All of them lead to a low red blood cell count. One common myth is that you should not exercise if you have anemia. And here's one piece of evidence why that's not true. In one study, 30 women with anemia were divided into two groups. Group number one, they received iron supplements and they did moderate intensity cardio 3 times per week for 30 minutes. Group number two just got supplements and they did not exercise. After 6 months, group number one increased their hemoglobin levels from 9.21 to 14.1. Group 2, who only took supplements, they increased their hemoglobin from 9.4 to 12.6. In other words, the increase was far greater in the group that also exercised. Now, why would that be? I mean, doesn't exercise require iron? So why does something that take your iron actually improve your iron? And that's the very reason why exercise improves your iron status. By depleting your iron in the short term, it tells the kidneys, I need more of this. So it stimulates the kidneys to produce a hormone called EPO, which stands for erythropoietin. That is a hormone that stimulates the bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. That's reason number one. Reason number two, the iron that you do have, exercise helps you improve the iron absorption better. In other words, your body is able to extract the iron from the red blood cells better. And the third reason why exercise actually helps you improve your iron is because moderate intensity exercise is anti-inflammatory. Inflammation reduces erythropoietin, and so if it blocks inflammation, it inhibits the inhibition on EPO. Now, if you need help crafting the right exercise program to address your anemia, regardless of what kind of anemia it is, whether that's iron, folate, or B12, we have a special exercise program, a service just for you. If you click on the description below, it'll take you to our homepage where you could schedule a free 10 to 15 minute Zoom chat, which is no pressure, no obligation, no sales pitch, just to help us understand your situation and can we help you. Moving on. Myth number two is that exercise worsens anemia, and that's understandable because exercise requires iron, B12, and folic acid. However, this lacks nuance. In one study, researchers recruited 191 women. Of those 191, 121 were sedentary and 70 were non-professional athletes. 15.7% of athletes had anemia, but only 10.7% of controls had anemia. But that's when you group all sports together. There are wide variations sport to sport, and some sports have greater prevalence of anemia and other sports have lower prevalences of anemia. For instance, in endurance sports where the foot hits the ground a lot, for example, running, anemia was as high as 38%, very, very common. However, in endurance sports where the foot does not hit the ground a lot, like cycling and swimming, the prevalence of anemia was as low as 11%. So we can't group all endurance athletes together. We have to distinguish between endurance sports where the foot hits the ground, whereas when it doesn't hit the ground. By the way, if you're wondering why is anemia so much higher in sports where the foot hits the ground, is because you're literally crushing red blood cells with every step you take. In team sports like basketball, volleyball, etc., the rates of anemia were approximately 15 to 20%. Finally, in strength and power sports, the rates of anemia were actually between 5 and 10%, which is lower than sedentary women who do not exercise at all. And again, I want to distinguish between anemia and low iron, because whereas the rates of anemia are slightly higher in the athletic population, and again, not all of them, compared to the sedentary population, iron deficiency is not. 27.1% of athletes had iron deficiency, but 29.8% of non-athletes had iron deficiency. Hence the distinction between anemia and iron deficiency. Anemia is low red blood cells, whereas iron or iron deficiency is how much iron is in each red blood cell. It doesn't have anything to do with the red blood cell count. So these are two of the most common myths about exercising with anemia. Now let's talk about common mistakes. Mistake number one is ignoring your symptoms. It's very important to listen to your body. It's quite normal for women with anemia to be extra tired, but you have to distinguish between the fatigue of anemia versus the fatigue of overtraining. And so so you have to develop a sensitivity to what kind of fatigue you're experiencing so that you're able to adjust your training, either push harder or push less hard at the appropriate times. Mistake number 2 is not exercising. As we showed earlier, exercise actually helps anemia. And mistake number 3 is ignoring your nutrition. While exercise helps anemia, eating an iron-rich diet or a B12 or a folic acid-rich diet really helps your anemia. And the best approach, of course, is to combine nutrition with exercise. If you like this information, I have a special newsletter about women's issues, including anemia, PCOS, menopause, and others. We have an opportunity for you to subscribe to that newsletter by clicking on the link in the description below. You always have the option of unsubscribing. Thank you, and goodbye.